This is PICK Computer Science video number 38, this time looking at debugging. So what is debugging? Well, we can say this is the process of removing syntactical, semantic or logical and runtime errors from your computer code. And where does all this happen? Well, debugging is tools in the IDE, in the integrated development environment, to help us look through our code, find the errors and solve them. The first type of debugging that we might find in our IDE is known as translator diagnostics. Now, to know a bit about this, we need to know a bit about syntax. The syntax of our code is the rules of the programming language, almost the grammar. As our English language has grammatical rules, so we have to put commas in certain places, we need to have capital letters at the beginning of sentences, etc., etc. All programming languages, just like English, have their own rules, and that is known as the syntax, and we have to follow the syntax, otherwise the computer won't understand that programming language. So translator diagnostics is where the IDE reports when syntax errors are made. It can suggest solutions, as in this screenshot here, where if you've got a keen eye, you can see that there's a little red box underneath that quotation mark there, and if I look in my errors list in VB.NET, I can see it's telling me that the closing parenthesis, the rounded bracket, is expected. So to fix that code, I'd put my rounded bracket on the end of my input box command here, and the syntax would be correct. Otherwise, the code isn't going to run. If I try and run it, as per this screenshot, it tells me that it's not going to run, that there are problems, and the same error is reported. Breakpoints allow the code to be stopped at a certain, usually strategic, point in your code. And those breakpoints allow us to check variables. To apply a breakpoint to line 9 in this code, I would just click in the margin next to it here. A red dot appears and the line is highlighted red. Then, when I run my code runs and stops at that point. At this point, I can hover over variables to see their values. So the rate is currently 0. I can then start to step. We'll look at stepping in a moment, but I press F8 on my keyboard and that line of code is executed. Line 9 is executed. Therefore, it's asking me for the rate of pay. Let's give myself a nice £15 an hour. If I OK that now and hover back over that same variable, I can see that it's changed. So breakpoints allow me to check the values of variables. So I mentioned stepping, and I used F8 there to step through lines of code in VB.NET. A definition of stepping is where we execute each line in turn. This allows us to check paths. Of course, if we've got things like if statements and loops and subroutines, then our code will follow different paths. It won't always follow the same sequence. So it allows us to check paths, as well as, of course, as the values of variables, constants, parameters, etc. Watches monitor the status of variables and objects as code is stepped through. We've seen that happen already. A more accurate description of what watches actually do is they will halt the code in its execution if a condition is met, such as a variable changing. In this next screenshot, some watches have been set up, and we will just run the code as normal, and the watches require count to be set to 4. So when count reaches 4 in the execution of the code will stop, and a programmer might be able to spot where any problems have arisen. Some further reading for you now will of course be for you to try out these debugging tools in VB.NET, but also maybe to find out about some of the other facilities that IDEs offer, such as version control, publishing of software, etc. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.